Hello, everybody. It is November 22nd. This is your host, Stephen Lurie with B2B Rocks. Happy to be here today. Today's guest is, I think it's Vera Sharapova. I think that's correct. I hope I got her. Vera Sharova. Any case, let me hold on. Let me just pause my music for a second. Before we get started today, I just wanted to bring up one thing that I saw was really interesting in the news, and it's kind of information that I think it's interesting to take a counter position. So there was this article in TechCrunch where they went back and measured 500 different SaaS companies, startups, I guess. I don't know the exact criteria for a startup, but they looked at these companies and they found measuring using KPIs like revenue, runway, growth. They said that people that hadn't cut sales and marketing were better off this year. So to stay the course was kind of the thing that was taken away from this article. I think that's an interesting idea. It's worth talking about that. But on the other hand, I think we got to be careful with the difference between correlations and causations. So maybe perhaps the reason why these companies didn't cut sales and marketing is because that they were doing really well and they were very confident in their model, more so than other companies that cut sales and marketing. If you're not sure that you've cracked the recipe for success, you might want to lay off your sales and marketing efforts until you have more customers and happier customers. So I just think that's an interesting take on this. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about this as well. Let me pull in my see if I can pull in my my screen here. Oh, yes. All right, cool. It's always nice when it works well. Hi, Vera.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, welcome so much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Excuse me. I think Sharapova, was a famous tennis player.
Yeah,
I
I
confused.
mean, it's a very recurrent mistake
Is
in the
it?
market, which makes me feel proud. But unfortunately, I can play tennis, but far away from Maria Sharapova.
Very Sharapova. Okay. Well, that's really good. So listen, as I admitted to you before we started talking about this subject, I know very little about hiring, even less so about executive searches, even less so about executive searches on an international scale. So why don't we start with beginning and talk about a little bit what this means and what it's all about. Uh,
Yeah,
s- okay, sorry.
absolutely. Well, executive search industry, I think that's for many, it's actually something which is not that well known, something that's is very confidential. However, the industry itself has undergone a lot of stages, and I think that today, especially given the market dynamics and what's happening on the talent market, the only way to be successful in this specific field is to be open, to be transparent. Think so, because at the end of the day, as I already mentioned last time we spoke, it's a lot about common sense. It's a lot about fundamental skills and fundamental human values. And at the end of the day, it's a sector which would say exists for very very long time, but the purpose is very straightforward and is very clear. It's all about helping companies grow and helping them effectively align their growth strategy with their people strategy by minimizing their own efforts in attracting and evaluating candidates for top level positions, for strategic positions.
How do you, one of the challenges of working in this industry is working with a lot of different companies on the technology side and on the SaaS side is just understanding what they do. How much time do you spend investing to understand what these companies do and really getting to know their culture?
Right, great question. Well, I think that it's a lot about also the intellectual curiosity of a person who is doing the job, whether it's an internal recruiter or an external recruiter. Because at the end of the day, I recall, and it was probably 5-10 years ago, when you were speaking about executive search in Europe. the first question coming from the companies was, are you specialized? And it's true that historically, executive search consultants, recruiters, they were very narrowly specialized, which again, I think that it resonates a lot with the overall dynamics of the European markets, especially countries like France and Germany, which were really focusing on this specialization. And I think it's a consequence of the Industrial Revolution. However, today, seeing that probably every second role will have to imply this entrepreneurial perspective, ability to pivot, openness. Executive search itself, it really went first global, but then I think that slowly it's also losing its specialization perspective, because again, like you need to find innovative, you need to find very probably uncommon solutions for a company in order to win the talent war. Meaning that again, like it doesn't mean that we can't be specialized, because at the end of the day, it's very important for you as an executive search consultant.
Hold on, you broke up a little bit. Still broken up. We'll get her back. Let's see if we can
Become very very biased and
You're breaking up a little bit, Vera.
Sorry? Yes.
You're breaking up. I don't know if it's our connection or something. I'm sorry, we kind of missed you. Lost you for about a minute. Why don't we turn off the video and see if the audio is just okay? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Let me just reconnect as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So it should be. Is it better now, Steve?
It sounds better. Let's see how we do with just the audio.
Okay.
It's unfortunate, but I'd rather hear you. If you're breaking up and we can't hear your audio, then that's going to be a problem. Okay, so so you were saying that there was a lot of specialization in executive search, and now there's more and more generalization and less specialization. I'm not sure. I didn't get the end of what you were saying.
Yes, no, I was saying that again, like the historical perspective of the executive search industry was to actually be specialized on a specific function, specific industry, specific country, which was kind of a consequence of the Industrial Revolution. Today, given that we look for diversity, we look for innovative solutions in business, and yes, basically the executive search itself is getting more and more complex. Being a generalist is actually a better idea, while at the same time, at this level, you always have to speak the same language with your clients. And yes, so every time you get a new mission, you have to learn the specificities of the sector and the value proposition and how the product works. And it's actually very enriching as an experience, because sometimes you're, I would say, reading during your free time. It's all about learning about new industry, learning about new sector. And yes, so it's can certainly take you some time, but that's probably the beauty of this sector and the beauty of this job.
Yeah, you got to like learning to work in technology or with SaaS. One of the things, employment markets are very different. I know, for example, Israel has a next to zero unemployment in the tech sector. The U.S. is a very competitive market with well-paying wages, and Europe is, although very dynamic sector, the wages aren't like what we see in Europe or I think Israel. What are some differences we see between the different markets, specifically between Europeans and Americans?
Right. Well, that's a great question. So I think that's to start with, and again, this is something which is very much related with the market dynamics over the last couple of years, when due to the COVID, many companies adopted borderless expansion models. Many companies went global. When it comes to differences in salary ranges across countries, I think that they're slowly being leveled out, especially at the very top level. However, I think that's, and it's probably one of the misconceptions of the international expansion for either European companies expanding in the US or US companies expanding in Europe, is that it still has to be aligned with the markets. And for example, what I see very often is it's not only about the differences in salaries, but also about some misalignment between the title and the salary. For example, we speak about the VP of sales, which probably in some European countries would earn let's say 120, 150 plus. But in the US, even if you make an adjustment to, would say, social security and like specific legislative environments in different countries, it still will be 30, 40% more.
Okay, so there is some sticker shock then when people first go to, for example, the European market to the US market.
Yes. I mean, it happens quite often, but again, like I think that today, given that especially in this SaaS environment, we speak global when we do executive search. It's less of a shock for most companies, or
Okay.
it's it can be a shock first, but then there's a way to adjust their strategy and to make sure that their go-to-market message, their employer brand, and their recruitment strategy is aligned with the market. But it's delicate and it's very sensitive because what happens very often is that a company which is not strong enough, especially if it's a European company where historically the whole ecosystem was a little bit more revenue versus growth oriented, so they will just not be able to afford the very senior vice president of sales of marketing that would probably be the one to take the company to the next level.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've heard is that European startups and scale ups tend to hire off hiring for some of the biggest roles because of lack of funding, that they don't have access to the same funds as their American counterparts, and so they tend to hold off a little bit on that and do that later on. What are some mistakes people make as they go into executive hiring? What are some mistakes that you see commonly made over and over again?
Yes, well, actually, I would call them probably not mistakes, but more misconceptions.
Okay.
Right? Because here I think that's it's better to look at it from this more preventive perspective. So one major misconception that we see, especially with SaaS companies that are looking to reinforce and to enhance their leadership teams as they want to either expand internationally or take the company to the next level, is the fact that very often they think that if say candidate hasn't done it at our scale, he will not able to do it, right?
Okay.
For example, we speak about a company that grew from A to B, and today they're looking for the VP of sales or VP of growth that would take them from B to C. It's understandable, and I think that it's fair enough also, especially if you work with an external recruiter, because at the end of the day, we have to find the candidate. But it's very dangerous in a way, because when defining this specific criteria, it's very important to look not at the quantitative KPIs, but probably at the underlying objectives and outcomes and the company strategy as a whole, because you can check and you can find a perfectly written CV where you have all these quantitative KPIs, but the question here is not about what have you done, but about how have you done this. And specifically about these metrics, like you can sometimes come across a very talented candidate with a very diversified profile that actually developed the major part of his career in the corporate sector, but someone that has been continuously exposed to, I would say, these challenges, whether related to opening new markets or whether related to developing a new product, can actually make growth SaaS environments, even though he's not coming from this specific sector. So I think that you just have to dig deeper again to understand what do you want to achieve, what kind of a person you would like to have in this position, and most importantly, how this specific role will evolve as your company grows. Because it's probably the second misconception, but it's related to this first one, is when companies and hiring managers become very rigid, I would say, with respect to org designs and selection criteria. And at the end of the day, we can see that the industry itself is extremely dynamic, but we're also continuously exposed to a very wide array of external factors, sometimes very unpredictable. And again, you have to dig deeper to understand how this specific role will potentially evolve with the time. And probably you will have to envision several different scenarios because, again, like what we've learned over the last couple of years is that long-term strategies, in most cases, they do not work as we expect. So again, like it's all about breaking it down into some specific skills and behavioral patterns that would probably demonstrate not specific objectives, but what is this person capable of doing and how flexible this person can be in adapting to different and changing circumstances and market contexts.
Please don't talk. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I always think of human resource professionals as risk adverse. They're there to be gatekeepers and to block anybody who doesn't fit the role to a T. So it always seems to me that they were looking for reasons to rule people out, as opposed to, and they're trying to do their best for the organization, the company. So it sounds like what you're talking about is kind of a microcosm of what we see on our larger level of companies. A lot of companies want to see on your resume or on your CV that you've actually done something, but it's not possible. You can't always have a candidate that's done exactly what you're looking for. Sometimes you have to step outside a little bit of your comfort area, and it sounds like that's the case with executive searches as well.
Yes, absolutely, Stephen. Again, I think the ultimate objective of an executive search is to find the ideal candidate which will tick all the boxes. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's not always possible, especially in relatively new industries and when we speak about some disruptive new products on the market. But the idea here is to just put more effort in looking at it probably in a more holistic way, and aside from really checking and finding those candidates that probably have done the same in a similar context, adding some diversity and finding some similar patterns in an industry which is either adjacent or is probably different to what you're doing today. And I think that's the main difference of the executive search, because at the end of the day, it's not about CVs, although they're important, but they probably will give you 5-10% information about the candidate. But it's about really applying this strategic thinking and understanding the market and the industry dynamics to see in which industries can I find similar patterns, or which are the companies that probably 3 years ago have done through similar stages in their life cycle, and where we can find this these candidates that might have the skills necessary to make this business grow. Because another question here is that if you find a candidate that has done something very similar in a very similar business context, the question is he going to be motivated to do it again and again? Especially given that, again, the talent market is very competitive. And I think that this learning and growth perspective is extremely, extremely important for candidates. Like, they are continuously looking for something which would also allow them to either apply their skills in a completely different context or to learn something new. In most cases, these candidates, they actually outperform their competition because they have this drive and motivation to go an extra mile and to learn something new.
How do you measure motivation? I mean, motivation isn't like a hard skill like accounting or something like that. Motivation is, I wouldn't even call it a soft skill, but for lack of a better term, I'm going to say a soft skill. How do you go in and measure that, and how do you look at that? How do you evaluate that?
Well, that's a tricky question.
Okay, fair enough.
When with respect to all soft skills, because for example, today again, when you look at candidates and when you look at their CVs, of course, there's at least some fundamental hard skills to evaluate. But then, and this is actually very encouraging, and it makes me very happy as an executive search consultant, because most job descriptions, they actually pretty much about soft skills and openness and motivation. So motivation itself, I don't think that's we can measure it, and it's not a skill. It's more about probably the emotion and the engagement related to the specific assignment or related to your current position. And of course, it's something which is very fragile, and that's why today we speak more about employee engagement than and retention than about recruiting. However, speaking about soft skills that lead to this motivation, like again, enthusiasm, openness, there's a way to measure them. Of course, there's one way that you measure them is by conducting behavioral interviews. And
Hmm.
again, like those are the interviews which are intended to unlock hows instead of what's, and understand what's the personality behind these achievements, and how this specific personality can actually align with the organizational culture your client company is trying to build. But of course, there are also other metrics and, for example, behavioral and personality tests that can be used to just support the recruitment process, and to probably unlock some red flags or some hidden strengths that you were not able to see in a candidate while doing the interview. But again, like with respect to measuring that, this is very delicate, because there are some quantitative metrics that can you put in the scorecard to just say, you know, like how does the candidate align with the organizational culture with respect to being open and transparent. But it's extremely delicate, because it also varies across cultures, it varies across countries, and I think that it's just important to use as many tools as possible to conduct this really 360 degrees assessment, and again, like focus on both what the candidate can do today, but also what's like how these specific skills can be leveraged for tomorrow. I don't know if I answered your question, because everything related to
Well,
behavior and personality, it's really hard to.
no, well, it's a big question, and I mean, it's I guess when you're hiring an executive, when you're hiring a VP or a C level at your company, it's a big investment of time, energy, and money. And typically, you're looking either to do this to continue your growth in a new market, or to add to your team to go raise money. So it's really critical. Or sometimes, in some cases, a CEO could be eventually hiring his own replacement. So there's a lot on the line for this, and so everyone wants to make sure, from the investors to the people that are at the company, want to make sure that this is done right. But it's what do we have beyond feelings to get this right? And I guess what you were saying is there's a lot of interviewing at multiple different levels. And do you do background checks at all? Do you talk with employees that have, or other colleagues that have worked with these people previously? Is that part of your role?
Yes, we do them. We do what we call reference checks.
Hmm.
And yes, reference checks are intended to get 2 or 3 references from former colleagues or direct reports or employers,
Yeah.
to again make sure that we've really obtained all the information we needed to obtain from a candidate, to not only determine whether he is the best fit for this role, but also to prepare his onboarding and post-hire integration, which it's a very important um, part of our job, because at the end of the day, recruitment cannot be transactional. It's not about placing the person; it's about helping him to integrate into the specific context. And yes, we also do background checks, but this is something which is very, I think, more typical for the US market. It's just background checks with respect to see whether all the information that you have obtained is correct, and university diplomas. But we don't do this in Europe, because it's more delicate, and it's very regulated. So for us, yes, we do reference checks, and in most cases we obtain very good references.
Yeah, just for my European friends out there, or European audience, we also have, in the United States, we have credit scores. So oftentimes, as part of your background check, they'll look at they'll look at your credit score as well. So if you haven't been good about paying your bills, they'll look there. There's a question here about company culture, matching the company culture. And how do you make sure the hired things match the company culture? And I guess that kind of leads into what your last question was. Or I mean, what your last response was. It's a lot of your interviewing. It's really understanding the founders and then really understanding the candidate.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, Steve. And I think that you answered this question, that it all starts with the client company. It all starts with the founders, and our job prior to we actually start the search itself and go to market to look for candidates. It's really spend a lot of time with the company, spend a lot of time with the founders to understand who they are as professionals, who they are as persons, what are their concerns, and what's the current team dynamics that they have in the organization. Because these kind of conversations, you need more than one conversation to really understand both their objectives, but also their personalities, and at the end of the day, the company culture. But they very often lead to certain redefinitions in the job description, because sometimes, again, you have a specific request to find, let's say, a VP of sales, a VP of marketing, and then through these discussions with the founders and with the companies, you realize that given their objectives and given their pain points, maybe they will be looking for something fundamentally different. So yes, I mean, it takes a lot of conversations. It takes also a lot of data, because at the end of the day, I think that the amount of information you as an executive recruiter have to process is enormous, and it will not only give you the insights about the candidate, but about the market as a whole. And again, like, our objective today is to make sure that not only we find a specific candidate to fill the specific position, but we also can accompany the clients in their expansion or growth or transformation efforts. So I think that this continuous exchange of information and back and forth communication is critical throughout the process to make sure that you get it right, because there's much more to evaluate than just say the candidate. You have to look at the market, you have to look at the objectives. Sometimes these objectives are changing, sometimes you have some force majeure circumstances. So yes, it's almost like when you work at the crossroads of recruiting and strategic consulting.
Yeah, it's funny as I listen to you talk about culture and fit. I'm reminded, I learned French when I was 30, and although I speak French very fluently, I understand that I'm not a French person and I don't have French culture. And no matter how long I live in France, I probably will never be really dialed in that sense. On the other hand, working in SaaS, working in technology, working in this industry, I feel like oftentimes I can speak with someone who can be half a world away, and we share common reference points just because we work in the same industry. So I think that culture, in some ways, it can be a really easy question to solve. In some ways, it can be a really hard culture to solve. I think one thing that it seems to me to have been a bigger problem in the past, or a big problem in the past on executive hiring, I've seen this at tech companies, at startups, is big company people versus startup people. Have you seen that be an issue? And what I mean is, like, when someone comes from a Fortune 500, they're used to having a whole marketing team and a communications team and having all these teams, versus a SaaS, you usually are the team. Is this an issue that you see, or is it a non-issue? People understand that when they're moving to a startup, they're going to have to be more self-actuating.
Right. Well, it's very often an issue.
Okay.
And again, because it's a maturing market, and at the end of the day, it's a lot about expectations management.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think that we might have these misconceptions on both ends,
Okay.
both at the end of on behalf of candidates, but also on behalf of companies. When candidates they think that they are ready to move to this high growth environment, and they feel that they're hands on, and they just want to step back from this corporate context, which for them is probably limiting, but they still might need a bit of preparation, and again, it's really about going back to remembering what you did early in your career and applying the skills and leveraging them alongside what you have learned in the corporate environment when it comes to managing teams and managing process. I think that it's really very situational. And an example that comes to my mind is when, let's say, a scale-up company is looking for an executive that will have to take them to the next level. They don't want to lose this spirit and culture and of an entrepreneurial organization, but at the same time, they realize that the current sales team or the current executive team is actually probably not ready to really introduce processes and systems and to lead teams and to optimize as they grow international. So that's where this specific corporate experience can be extremely, extremely valuable. And again, corporate experience, it varies so much across countries because, for example, if you look at companies like Microsoft or Salesforce, someone that has launched a new market for them in an emerging country, and I've come across actually candidates with this profile in Africa. It's almost like working for a startup, and this experience can be very, very valuable for a high growth international SaaS organization. So again, like it's not about what you have done, but it's about the market context, and also it's about you as a person, because you can work in a corporate context because that was the career path that you've chosen 10 or 20 years ago. But these conversations with candidates, they can actually unlock the entrepreneurial potential that has now been realized. Or maybe it's a corporate executive that has been running their own projects or their own businesses in parallel. So I think that it's just a lot more than, again, like what we see on paper, and it's a lot more than in a single name of a company, whether it's a big name or it's an emergent company. But again, like it's expectations management, and you just need to look at specific probably examples to identify where these sources of talent might be.
It sounds, you mentioned processes there. So it sounds like when you start adding a lot of senior management and doing executive hires, it's probably when an organization is transitioning from startup to scale up. And so that they figured out their growth, they figured out their product market fit, they figured out how to satisfy customers, and now they need to really grow all this by several factors. Is that correct? Is that the right assumption, or do you work with teams of all different sizes and there's no real correlation to size?
Yes, that's right, Steve. Yes, that's all about passing from, again, like one stage to another stage, and very often I think companies realize when they don't manage it proactively that the skill set they have in the organization, again, it's not enough to take it to the next level. But I think that we have to be careful with that, because again, it's not only about the stage in the life cycle, but it's also about external circumstances. And today, there's like one trend that we see on the market that was not there a year ago, is that even though within the scale-up environment, it is important to have executives that, as you said, are able to put certain processes in place, to align teams, and to develop certain structure, which is probably not so relevant for an early stage startup, given that the market is being disrupted, and you still don't know what will happen next year, and it's probably harder to retain customers and harder to onboard new ones. You always have to be a combination of both. So it's, again, like about the ability to create processes, but it's also about the ability to pivot, and sometimes going back to basics, and just creating a go-to-market strategy, or approaching new customers, or doing some cold calls. And it's a lot about flexibility at the end.
I was just thinking about Twitter right now, and Elon Musk has said he won't be staying on as CEO. So they'll be looking for a new CEO. I don't know. Maybe we can. It'd be kind of curious to see what their candidate might look like. They probably have a very short list. What are some other trends you're seeing in the marketplace? You mentioned this one trend. What are some other things you're seeing in 2022? Because 2022 seems to be a year of change, or a year we're going to remember. Are you there?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Sorry, Steve. I was about
okay.
to ask the same question. Yes, I think that 2021 and 2022 they have been the years of change, and again, like not only in the technology and SaaS environment, but across all the industries,
Mm.
because all those conversations about growth and transformation and pivot and openness and diversity, many companies they're actually forced to accelerate these processes, because prior to 2020 those were just conversations which were a little bit hard to implement, especially in say more solidified corporate environments. But again, like coming back to SaaS and high growth environments, one thing that's I think that I've already mentioned, but I'll repeat it, is that we see less and less cross-cultural differences, because many companies adopted these borderless expansion models, or decided to decentralize their leadership team. And this is something that we see with the US companies, especially those that aspire to establish global brands, that they actually decentralize their leadership teams in Europe or elsewhere,
Mhm.
which I think that it's both an opportunity and a challenge. It's an opportunity because I think that the candidate market has become much more open and much more diverse. And to start with, it's a candidate-driven market. But the second one is, that we still have to overcome these discrepancies, which are mainly related to the fact that there are differences across life cycles, there are differences across compensation. So it's again, like it's an opportunity and a challenge at the same time. And another positive change which I see on the market, which again, like I want to come back to what you mentioned before with respect to the nature of recruiting and an HR, that it used to be a little bit more probably administrative and not so aligned with the strategies, that today there's no other way for hiring managers within the organization to be successful than really being aligned with the strategy and really positioning human capital as one of the key drivers actually of the organizational success. And I think that's we see this both within the companies, but also when it comes um, to venture capital and investments and valuations, because again, like we have some quantitative metrics that impact the market, but from the VC perspective today, especially that's with this uncertainty, valuations are going down, and probably investors are a little bit more cautious than before. I think that's a strong team and a focus on human capital as the key driver of operational value creation is really something which we will be seeing over the next couple of years, hopefully, because again, it's really hard to make predictions. I would rather call it an assumption.
An assumption, a best guess. It's really interesting. There's this concept in SaaS, product-led growth, and I would argue that part of your product is your people. That if you have great people and you have a strong culture and a strong vision, that will lead as people, as your customers are introduced to your employees and become aware of who your people are and their values, their vision, and their philosophy behind that becomes part of your company's product, that people are, you inspire confidence with that. So finding the right people, the right fit, especially as you were saying, in a market that's going to be even more competitive than ever, whether it's for investment dollars or what have you, is that much more important. Just makes a lot of sense. Are there You were mentioned about 2022 with the layoffs that are starting to happen right now. Is there more talent available for you to place? Has it made your market more dynamic? Has it made you more challenging? What's happening with the market as far as your company on a micro level? How has the market changed?
Right. Well, in 2022, I think that's up until now, probably up until the fourth quarter, the markets has been extremely challenging,
Okay.
especially within the high growth and SaaS environment, because on the one hand, we had the so-called talent war, on the other hand, we had the Great Resignation. Again, like a lot when it comes to technical roles. I've come across candidates that had 8, 10, 12 offers on the table, which again puts additional pressure on the hiring company with respect to how fast they can move in the recruitment process, but still having enough interviews to make sure they made the right decision with respect to how to position the employer brand and the culture. So I think that's, and I heard from many industry peers that this last year has been incredible, and this is something that the recruitment industry hasn't seen in probably the last 15 or 20 years, in terms of again, like the complexity and the abundance of offers on the market, and the also the like, really in certain areas the lack of candidates,
Yeah.
which again, like I think that we've already mentioned that there's a way to overcome it, but it's still quite challenging for companies right now. And again, like it's very normal, because we've seen it at the very beginning of the pandemic. We've seen it right after the 2008 crisis happened, is that many companies are a little bit uh, cautious with respect to hiring leaders, because you see that this last quarter many shifted to zero-based budgeting. Many companies introduced recruitment freezes, because just no one knows how the market will behave, because you have many factors that are still driving this change, but it's hard to predict consequences. But I think that, again, coming back to what we discussed, that today people is the main driver and the main element in the organizational value creation. I think that's just a small pause towards the end of the year. Maybe it will last until the end of the first quarter, and hopefully the market will pick up towards the next year. But the 2022 has been extremely intense and extremely dynamic, and just that. Today we can take a little pause and take a breath, and also reflect on everything that has happened and everything that has been done in a more strategic way.
Yeah, it's our market is a little bit like the world itself. It's very unpredictable right now, and I thought that of course, famous predictions. I thought this kind of headwinds that our industry was facing was just a little bit of blip, but it's turned out to be more than that, and it seems to be tracking just like the wider economy as a whole, which is the wider economy, because of inflation, because of petroleum, what have you. Everything's just a little bit tougher right now, and I think until we get those figured out, it's probably similar, more of the same. I don't think we'll really get completely on track until geopolitically everything's a little further.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
it's unfortunate, because I think there's so many other things that we could be working on as a world and focusing our resources on. What about founder succession? Are founders often involved with recruiting their own successor?
In most cases, yes. And again, like it's according to our experience. So yes, I mean, the most probably they will be involved in the succession, because it's an extremely delicate process, and of course, like it's also many emotional, actually, for many.
Yeah, I mean it's like walking away from your baby potentially.
Yeah, exactly, like selling your first house.
Yeah, like selling your first house. A lot of founders choose to leave. But I think that's the exception. I think in many cases, a lot of founders are pushed out by their investors. Do you agree with that assessment, or is that not correct?
Yeah, well, that's a great and a very difficult question, because I think that there's a very fine line between being pushed and willing to leave because you just feel this pressure coming from the organization. I don't know if it's from the investors, if it's from the market, but you just start feeling that you are no longer enjoying what you are doing, because probably you're a founder who is very entrepreneurial and is there to create new concept, to launch them, but um, you wouldn't be necessarily the founder that, again, like, can effectively scale the company or can take it internationally. So I think that it's always a mixture of different factors.
Right.
I wouldn't say that they are pushed. Yes, sometimes they are, but it's also about self-awareness, because when you become self-aware that you're no longer motivated by, or I mean, motivated, probably this is not the right word, but
Right.
like, you're no longer good at what you are doing. I think that's your motivation go down, and of course it can. Yes, it's a lot about the self-awareness, and we haven't seen that many founder successions in Europe, but I think that it's more that I can rely more on the US examples, but yeah, so it's
Well, I mean, in essence, when a founder leaves, it's because he feels like he's finished his mission, or he's lost confidence in himself to be able to take him to the next level, or his investors in the team has lost confidence in them to take the next level. So it's one thing if you feel like mission accomplished, I'm moving on to my next thing, and you're finding a founder, at least you've got a sense of accomplishment. But in those other two situations, either your investors in your team have lost confidence in you, or you've lost confidence in yourself, that's a highly emotionally charged situation. And I think founders are probably a little bit wrung out by that time and tired. And maybe similarly to a divorce, sometimes they don't look at everything that they should be doing, or don't know what they should be doing. What should founders be thinking about as they look for their own successor? They need to be looking for the qualities in their successor, but what other things should they be thinking about?
right. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the emotional aspect of it, because again, like, yes, sometimes we see painful stories, and especially if we speak about first-time founders that really invested all their energy and created this project almost like being their baby. So then it becomes emotional. But I think that the first thing that founders have to do prior to planning their succession is actually to manage this emotion, and to really look at it um, almost like an external advisor. So look at it from a more objective perspective, because there's no other way to do an effective hiring decision. Because first, candidates will fail if there's something wrong. And I think that's, again, like, if you're looking for a successor, is because within the current context, and it's not only about you as a founder, but it's about the whole team. You just probably do not have all the skills and competences to take it to the next level. So I think that, again, like, the first advice would be to manage this emotion, to really probably with the help of the investment team, with the help of an external advisor, to look at your org chart the way it is now, and really trying to reflect on the past, but also to unlock and how this organizational chart will have to evolve as the company grows, given the objectives and the outcomes that they expect from the next stage of the life cycle. And yes, being objective with yourself, with respect to what are the skills that you are missing, and how to effectively design the scorecard for your successor to make sure that he will do the job properly. Because, like, again, it's not about you. I think that it's very important for the founders to understand that they will probably be better at doing something else at this stage, or maybe they should just, I'm not saying about stepping back and leaving the company, but also it's about assuming a different function in the organization. Can be staying on the board, or maybe it's a founder who's extremely good at product development. So again, like, it's a kind of a step back, but I think that it's very logical, and at the end of the day, the markets will see it. And I mean, the founder is always the founder, because when you start presenting a company, or like even us, when we speak about the client that has already live through this period of founder succession, you always speak about the founder, and he's always the person that created the business. But I think that's it's just that's, I mean, emotions, they're very, very dangerous in business, not only in hiring, but in all decisions, whether it's, again, like an acquisition, a post-merger integration. And we can see today that many mistakes actually made because of the emotional and human factor. So let's try to avoid them.
That's isn't that the case? In the marketplace right now, with we're talking about headwinds and a lot of companies. There's been a shift from this all-out sprint towards growth to more responsible growth, making sure that you're growing in a way that's sustainable and that you have a path towards profitability. Do you think a lot of CEOs and C-levels are going to be pushed out? Do you think this is going to create movement in the employment market at this level?
I don't think that a lot of them will be pushed out, because, again, like it's
maybe that's not the right verb either, pushed out. But do you think that's just going to create movement just in general? I mean, there's probably going to be additional M&A activity that we haven't seen in years past as well.
Yes. No.
Lost you for a second. Hold on. You there? Oh, I think we lost you.
Aligned with.
Hold on, we lost you for a second. Can you go back 1 minute?
So I lost you for a second.
Yeah. So you were saying, I was saying that because of M&A and activity in the movement, there's probably going to be some changes in the market in hiring or in C-levels.
Yes, I mean, there might be some changes, and again, like it's inevitable consequence of an M&A process, because these changes can be at the C-level or, let's say, at lower levels of the organization. But these organizational restructurings, they might probably take place. But again, hands of the founders, especially before this acquisition happens, and how they deal with the change, and how they reinforce their teams, and how they reposition their organization or unlock some hidden potential within the companies. It's all in their hands. So we might see some changes, but I think that we won't see that many, because especially over the upcoming 2 or 3 months, because the market in general, both in terms of external growth and acquisitions and recruitment, is very cautious, it's very careful. So I think that's we still have some time to reflect on what's happening, and this is exactly the time that is probably given to the founders to at least evaluate what can be done internally to avoid major impacts on the organization, especially if, according to them, it's not going to be a positive impact.
Really interesting. Vera, you're a partner at N2Growth. Can you tell us a little bit about N2Growth so we can, just for a little perspective?
Yes, absolutely. N2Growth is an international executive search and leadership advisory firm. What is interesting is that the company was created in the United States in 2004, and the executive search activity was born from the leadership and coaching practice, because it's our founder, Mike Meyer, that he was actually, and he is a very well-known executive coach with many of the Fortune 500 C-level executives, and at some points his clients were approaching him and asking, like, Mike, you've helped me, so much about our company, about our culture. Why don't you help us to attract like-minded people in the organization? So that's how the executive search activity was born. Today, N2Growth is a truly global organization with with offices in more than 50 countries. We also rank in the Forbes top 10 executive search companies in the US, and I think that's within this rating, we are the youngest company. So we're still not as big as our major competitors, which allows us to actually be very flexible and to work cohesively across countries. So it's really a global organization, and thanks to that, we were privileged to be part of some very interesting cross-border success stories supporting our clients, whether American clients or European clients, throughout expansion, transformation, and global growth. But I think that's, again, coming back to how the company was created. We really look at executive search through leadership and strategic lens to make sure that not only we place the best person for the organization, but we also help clients to align across many different organizational perspectives and to develop sustainable hiring strategies.
So how long have you been working in executive search yourself?
In executive search, well, I started in executive search in 2005.
Okay.
And it was actually my first student job.
Okay.
This was not in France. It was a little bit to the south. I was based in Spain, in Barcelona at that time. So yes, I spent my first 6 years working in executive recruitment. And then actually was the crisis of 2008, like this whole situation, and it hit Spain very hard. So it made me rethink many things in work and in life. And I left the sector and spent another 9 years in investment advisory and then in private equity, working in Europe and also in Latin America. And then, that's how I learned also the other side of executive search and hiring, being on the side of the client. And then I joined N2Growth in 2019. So again, like I can say that I've been in executive search since I had a break in the very needed to better understand our customers and to really get the broader market perspective.
Well, that's great that you've gotten to see both sides of it as well. What do you think? What are the hardest roles for you to fill, and why? Are these executive roles or is it technical roles?
Well, I haven't done technical roles for a very long time because,
Okay.
again, I think that our market is segmented, and when we do executive search, we normally don't do technical
Okay.
recruitment. But I did it. Some years ago. So I think that's like these are different, actually, kind of difficulties. So I think today, for example, if I had to fulfill a technical role, it would be a little bit more difficult because recruitment strategies and like the whole process of how you handle the executive search mission, it also differs depending on the role. But I think that's globally, yes. I mean, technical roles, they've always been hard to fill in. And like, even if we look at the executive search market, I think that's the most challenging ones this year were the roles of a CTO, right? Both because the increase in talent competition, but also because of the both technical and leadership complexity. Because today, whether it's a CTO, CMO, or an HR director, you always have to have this organizational vision and broader perspective, and everyone has to be a true business partner. So I think that's we also need to do a lot of coaching and mentoring to make sure that even though this leadership and visionary potential is not unlocked in a candidate, it's our job to actually identify it and to bring all those rising stars to the market, which is not easy at times.
Yeah, boy, a CTO. I've always been fortunate enough to work closely with CEOs, but some of the people that have the biggest effect on me as mentors were the CTOs. Just very talented individuals. I think that combination of technical skills and leadership and communication skills, just amazing. Just an amazing combination. Yeah. If they have all three of those things, it's really impressive. Listen, thank you so much for your time. To my audience out there, if you'd like to get in touch with N2Growth, you can find Vera Sharova. She's on LinkedIn. She's also on Twitter. N2Growth has a Twitter handle as well. So it's Vera Sharova. I'm going to put her name in here. And she speaks, I don't know, like 6 languages. Is that right, Vera?
No, not yet. Well, I speak 4 because I have to.
4 languages.
Okay.
Okay, well, I think we can safely assume Spanish is one of them. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. It looks like we got your video back. Our signal was kind of breaking up. What do you, compared to 2000, you mentioned 2008, 2009. How do you see? I looked at a comparison of value lost in the stock market, especially on the tech side. The dip was much bigger in 2008, 2009. Do you see any similars between 2008 and 2009? Do you have any thoughts in comparing the two time frames? I was around for the dot-com bust around 2000, so I actually go back 2 cycles. But do you see any similarities or any patterns appearing?
Yeah, I see patterns, or maybe better say lessons
Yeah,
learned
yeah.
from 2008. And again, like it's both about the stock market, but also about the private equity and venture capital, because I think that today the industry, I mean,
Mhm.
the private equity and VC industry is still very strong, whereas investors have a lot of dry powder, and basically they can envision and manipulate the situation better. And I think that they will react faster to whatever happens next, because one of the, I think, major mistakes of the 2008 crisis was that the reaction was too slow, because no one knew how to how to behave in this situation. And then the investor, they actually approached and continued investing despite the crisis. They got the higher return. So I think that's yes, it's more about the lessons learned. And again, like today we are in a completely different situation with respect to the technology and globalization and all that. I think that it just facilitates the decision making process, and also creativity across the market, because there's so many new things. And what is clear is that we cannot rely on old patterns. And in any case, things will continue moving. And it has never been easy, especially for early stage companies and new business models. But it's about conscientiousness, resiliency, and just drive, because there's no other way than to move forward.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when I look at our industry, technology and SaaS and what have you, in some ways, it's never been easier to found or build a company. As far as a technology standpoint, you can assemble your stack of different SaaSes and build the functionality you want and put in place the processes. But in other ways, the expectations of the market, finding the right product market fit, getting your message heard through all the noise, and also meeting customer expectations has never been harder too. You really have to do an excellent job on all those things. And now, in addition to all that, there's a little bit of headwind. We're facing a bit of headwind, so it's not an easy time. But I don't think, like you said, it's never been easy. But it's. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. If anyone needs to get in touch with Vera, please contact me. I'll be happy to put you in touch. Or again, as I said, she's available on LinkedIn. And they also, I think N2Growth also has a Twitter handle. Have a great day.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, bye-bye.
Have a great day. Bye.
Okay, really interesting. Gosh, I've never been a hiring manager. Scary idea. Thank you so much for watching. Our next show is Tuesday the 22nd. We're gonna have GVS. Oh shoot, I'm not sure I can pronounce his name. Well, let me see. GVS Shaitanya. I hope that's right. So he's head of growth at Right Sonic. And so we're going to talk about, they've got this really interesting SaaS where they use AI to help people create more content and scale their content strategies. So we'll meet with him, see what he has to say, learn more about their company. I think AI, what's interesting is that it's this horizontal technology. It's going to change everything in all different industries. That, again, it's Tuesday, November 22nd. It's going to be at 1 p.m. Then next week, looks like on the 29th, our guest fell through, so we won't be having a guest on the 29th. On December 1st, we do have some lined up. It's Marcus Omer from a venture capital group. So we're going to be talking with them about what's happening on the venture capital side, what is their impression of that. And then after that, after December 1st, we're going to change our hours. So we'll be live casting from 6 p.m. in the evening. We're going to try a different time, a different hour, and see if that works a little bit better and if we're able to reach a larger audience. Thank you very much and have a great day.